let's band together. Let's form a collaboration and a collective and actually make some real significant change.
Lockie, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Gary.
Have you been?
I'm good. I'm good. As good as one can be.
Respect. Why don't you give some context to everybody about your origin story? I call it comic book number one. Like, who is Lockie? And then we'll go into stuff. I really want to get into Black 100.
Sure. It's been a wild ride. I'm more of a generalist in background. I was a reformed investment banker. I think Musa talked about that a little bit earlier.
Lockie, I apologize for interrupting. Take me even further back. Where were you born? What kind of kid were you?
I love it. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. So I don't know how many you're familiar with Philly. Lovely.
By the way, I'm obsessed with Philly. I actually think I'm going to get some razz on this, but I actually think Philly is more New York than New York in a lot of ways, like the way people perceive it. I just think the grit in Philly is very real. I'm a fan. Go ahead.
100%, and that really does define my story. There you go. It's about grit, hard work, the hustle, but still family focused. So I went to Georgetown, which was amazing. So I went to DC and then decided to work on Wall Street. And so that's where I thought I wanted to go, but quickly realized that the people across the table for me were actually having more fun. So knowing that I needed to go figure out how a person like myself could fit into this crazy corporate world, I used the time at business school. I went to Harvard Business School to understand how someone who's left and right brain could actually leverage skills and be unique. And I lucked up in having a great internship with Domenico De Sole and Tom Ford in London at Gucci. And Domenico said to me, look, if you can figure out how to commercialize creativity, that is something that very few people do. And so it was that encouragement that has led me down this incredible windy path, but that windy path has put me right exactly where I needed to be.
Where did that windy path start? What was the first professional move off of that moment?
I decided to go to a startup because I knew I'd be able to learn a lot at a startup. I wanted to go to retail, fashion. I liked that aspect of creativity and commercialization. So in 6 years, I worked at a company called Baby Style. I don't know if you remember it.
I do.
But on the left coast, yeah, awesome. It was a great brand, ultimately sold to Right Start. But I was able to learn everything about how to create a widget. And that then led me to great opportunities. I became the COO of a fashion brand and in charge of marketing. I helped them make a huge splash and get their first Mercedes-Benz fashion show, which was pretty incredible. But then ultimately fell in with the private equity. So kind of that Wall Street mentality I still had. And working with private equity-backed companies allowed me to develop my growth hacking skills. But it unfortunately turned into the Great Recession. So I was on the road 275 days out of the year. That was intense as an operating partner, but it's where I was able to cut my teeth. And I got an opportunity to separate the signals from the noise and working with many different portfolio companies. And now looking back, it makes total sense. The role at UNTUCKit is a combination and a culmination of everything that I did before. So it's been a really wild but circuitous route to kind of lead me right back to where I needed to be.
Speaking of which, because I know the story really well because the founder dabbled in the wine space and I'm Jersey born, so I know a lot of that stuff. That math-based, to your point, performance, Wall Street, with a product that has so much permission to build a brand, how much do you enjoy going left brain, right brain, math, art? Like, is that something that comes natural to you? Is that something that, from a branding standpoint, knowing that it's an organization that has a lot of performance marketing DNA, is it hard to get brand conversation? Like, what's kind of the under the hood a little bit for all the marketers that are watching?
Sure. So in this wonderful digital age that we're living in, I think when I met UNTUCKit, they had the Shopify experience, which is phenomenal. I know you're a fan of Shopify.
Yep.
And as well as QuickBooks and Excel. And that was the extent of the tech stack at that point in time. So my role is really being that bridge between the marketing side as well as the operational side and making that glue work and leveraging the technologies that we have. So from a marketing perspective, there's 5,000 companies in the marketing tech stack landscape. I know you know that. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to understand which of those technologies can help a brand scale. And one of the things that I can do quite well is understand product categories, trends, understanding those consumer bases, and then leveraging the right technology stack to allow us to be agile, to build out. And we did all of this in 2.5 years, which is kind of insane. When we look back at it, it was a really quick build to get to this next generation tech stack, but now it works. And we're actually able to double down and do things that the big guys, right? The Best Buys, the Walmarts, the Amazons, we have personalization at scale, which is amazing through the partners that we've started to work with. But I'm very fluent in the math and the technical side, and therefore working with the creatives and making sure we're pulling in those right technologies so that we can get to hyper scale without spending lots and lots of money because we're venture capital backed.
Talk to me about what happens. This hits, COVID hits, you have this crazy leadership position. You've got your whole plan. I'm sure, even just listening to, you don't get to Georgetown by accident. You're clearly, very bright and process and understood how to, like, I'm an entrepreneur because I was bad at school. I didn't know how to play in that process. You've got both. So you've got your plan. How did you personally talk to me about the best thing and maybe even the thing that you most missed the mark on? Because I think humility and like just showing people, even incredible executives like you, like, did you think it was gonna be so short, so you did this? Did you stop media and then realized, oh crap, the media is so underpriced? Like, talk to me about those first 2 to 3 weeks. How did you deal with COVID?
Well, fortunately, I had been through the Great Recession. And so working with companies and helping them. So for me, it was that pattern recognition that though COVID was completely different in the Great Recession, there were principles that were the same. And so we as an organization banded together very quickly and did all the things. I wrote an article on this of, this is feeling just like 2007, 2008, but obviously it's quite different and there's health concerns. So for me, it was going into it not being fearful. I'd seen this before. And so from a leadership style, it was really important for me and the teams to just come together and communicate, right? We communicated through this. That was the secret sauce. Some people had never seen that. We have lots of millennials that work in our company. This was new for them. And so in understanding what we need to do and being very clear, even though we all have fear, right? We didn't know if people would still be buying shirts in the thick of this. We're based in New York City, the epicenter. But the good news is we did all the unsexy work before. We talked about foundations before. I'd say from a humility perspective, I've learned that we actually should have done more of that. It's the stuff that you don't get credit for that we got caught, right? That we hadn't completed certain things because we thought we had time. And then COVID hit and we realized, look, we got to get curbside. We have to launch that initiative. This is important for our consumers. It's important for our sales associates. They're our front line. So we did all that work, and I'm so proud of the team because we were able to pull together and we launched technologies during that time, which I never thought we would have been able to do. But because we had that flexible infrastructure, we were able to bolt on capabilities so that we could deliver these things in real time, which was pretty amazing.
Let's talk about Black 100.
Sure. It's definitely my passion project. So thank you for asking about it.
Of course.
But I felt sitting in this privileged position, I sit in very privileged circles. And because I'm usually one of the only few African Americans and sometimes typically the only female, I started to notice that there was an outpouring of support, which I'm really grateful for. But I'm on 5 different task forces about racial equity. And it was a light bulb moment because I realized that, wow, with this much interest and with this many people who want to support us, we can do amazing things. We can actually turn this moment into a movement. And so what the Black 100 is, which is quite simple actually in its charge, the idea is let's band together, let's form a collaboration and a collective and actually make some real significant change. So the idea is leveraging, Harvard Business School as the base. I'm an officer of the HBS Club of New York. Can we pull our resources and our really wide networks to place 100 exceptionally qualified Black executives on Fortune 1000 company boards by the end of 2021? It is so simple.
Such a narrow, a lot of times the narrow KPI enables it to actually happen.
You got it, 100%. So everyone that I've spoken to, it's one of those, this is a no-brainer. Why haven't we done this before? And part of it is because, look, we're applying business principles. We need to create a marketplace. We're going to leverage network effects. We need people within the Harvard Business School community, and there's lots of us out there globally, who are sitting on boards, who have influence. We appreciate the good sentiment and the goodwill, but let's do something. Refer talented Black people in your network. We're going to build this marketplace to align the supply of talent with the demand for talent. I've partnered with Leadership Now project, which is fantastic. They have a pledge of thousands of organizations and individuals who have said, we're going to do more about this. We want to do more. And this is the mechanism to allow them to do it. And so
Lockie,
aligning the supply and the demand, we're the bridge, and we're going to leverage Harvard Business School from a training perspective to allow for professional development, board resume writing, all the things that are necessary to make sure we close the gap on a 3% representation of Blacks on corporate 1,000 boards.
Lockie, one of the things I'm thinking a lot about, I've always had an interesting spin on boards from, obviously, this has been unprecedented times in the awakening of people on social issues, both between Me Too and Black Lives Matter in a very short period of time in the context of American history. You know, I grew up, you know, I'm 44 and I grew up a very poor student, but felt I had a lot to contribute. And so I'm of the generation, ironically, we probably share this, and you kind of went the other way because you were great at it, which was, you know, Georgetown, Harvard, they became the badges that allowed people to win that game. When you were just talking, there was a couple of Black young juggernauts of understanding the current state of consumer that went through my head that I said, they're not going to hit the radar of this Black 100 because they don't have that pedigree. And it's kind of like what happened in sports. All of a sudden, after 4 generations of 80-year-old, 70-year-old head coaches, we've seen in a lot of sports this extraordinary explosion in 32 and 34-year-old coaches. I just want to personally say I'd love to have a combo with you because I might have a very unique point of view of people that might actually bring incredible value, though no Fortune 1000 board is going to look at it because they don't have the reps yet. I believe because the world has become so consumer centric, and obviously the company you're at, you're going to be able to dissect this. So I'd love to talk to you about that. Maybe offline.
I love that. And I think there's going to be a lot of
do you see where I'm going with that? Because I think
100%.
I think right now, rightfully, and this is what we should focus on, it should be about Black lives, and I think women and all that. But I also think that just different, you know, we talk a lot about different perspectives. I actually think the biggest thing that I see from my purview on these Fortune 1000 boards is everyone looks the same from the background of over highly educated, very operational, but missing the mark on creativity and consumer-centric realities that is grossly missing at a lot of boards.
I think you're right. And there's going to be a lot of surrogate mothers for this, and we want that, right? I want this to cascade out because it's just a start. But to your point, let's do something that's measurable. Let's show people that we can do this. We are not powerless to this. So let's move the needle forward. And I think we're going to have cascading effects. And let's extend this to management teams. Why don't we, right? Why don't we broaden it to the Fortune 5000? I think there's going to be a lot that comes from it. I'm super excited.
I'd love to chat about it. And I really appreciate your time on here. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Talk to you soon.